you're new here, my name is Claudia Campbell. I am your host, and I'm super happy today because I have one of my amazing friends on, Cassie Reeves. Hello, Cassie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
So today we have some really fun stuff that we're going to be talking about, and all Christian girl stuff. So if you're a Christian girl, you will get this. If you're a Christian guy, if you're just a dude in general.
If you're a girl in general.
If you're anybody in general,
Yeah.
I think that this episode will reach you because today we are talking about comparison. And comparison, I'm pretty sure, is something that everybody struggles with at some point in time. I know I've gotten asked about it. How do I not compare myself to my friends? How are all of this stuff? But before we go there, I think it would be great if we kind of talked about how we met each other.
Okay, so what, March?
It was in March, yeah.
March 9th?
9th-ish, yeah.
9th-ish?
I'll let you share your side and then I'll share my side.
Okay, my side of the story is got a group of friends together, went to the Joshua Bassett concert, waited in line forever. We knew about the little X that he comes and stands on, and so we go to find the X, and we get there, and Claudia's sitting there with some friends. I thought she was with them, but
yes,
she wasn't.
Okay, so basically what happened is it was spring break, and I had like this broken like little boot thing, and I was doing nothing for spring break, and all my friends were out doing things, and I just was kind of like, dang, this is like a kind of rough spring break. And so at the end of spring break, I found out Joshua Bassett was coming to Nashville, and I was like, wait a second, I should go. And the tickets were like stupid cheap, so I bought tickets. And on my way in line, you guys know about me if you listen to the podcast, I am such an extrovert that I was in line. I was just making friends with everybody in line, and there were these college girls who go to college at Belmont University in Nashville, and so I kind of made friends with them. One of the girls had been to this concert before, so she knew like all of the secrets, and she was like, stay with me, you'll be good. And I was like, oh, okay. So we go, and apparently there was an X on the floor, and if you found that X, like, you were supposed to stand by it, because at some point in the night, he would come back to the crowd, and he would stand on that X. So if you didn't have, like, the VIP tickets, like, that's where you needed to go. So I got there, and it was really funny, because I was with these, like, 2 or 3 girls, like, college girls.
I fully thought she was, like, with them.
Yeah, and so I was not. Me and my sister were going by ourselves, and Cassie and her friends were all there, and so we were all kind of looking at each other, like, who's going to get the X, like... And then we realized, wait, we need to band together. So there were like 9 of us, or like 10 or 12. I don't even know. There were so many of us that were just like apart. Like we were like, okay, we're like, here's the theory.
A circle around the X.
And we were like, we're gonna block everybody out. And we did. And if you saw any of this on Instagram whenever I posted it, Joshua Bassett, he like had a moment with all of us. And then he like held my hand. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this actually happened. So it was all worth it in the end. But the crazy thing about this is that I remember specifically after that, I met Cassie and her sister specifically. Her sister had the same birthday as me, and Cassie was like my age, and we started talking. We had like the same interests in everything, and so I was just like, oh my goodness, this is such a cool human. So we just kind of kept in contact through social media.
Well, I remember like at the concert you said something like, did you guys see that he like loves Jesus? And I was like, oh, she loves Jesus too.
And we were like, what? And so AKA the start of a amazing friendship, which is just awesome.
And we laid on the ground and screamed,
we
set
did.
me free. It was so therapeutic.
We did. We laid on the ground and we started just screaming. So it was just a really great, like, it was a cool meeting. Never expected, like, that would happen. But here we are today.
Yeah, what?
Here we are today. Like, we just met randomly at a concert and here we are today. But, Cassie, tell us a little bit. Tell everyone about yourself, what you like to do.
I'm 18. I'm a senior in high school. I go to a really small school in the middle of a cornfield. I play soccer, do track, do theater. Theater is like my main thing. I'm on the worship team at my church and a worship team at a different church for the youth ministry. And I'm planning on going into worship ministry.
So she's really, really good at singing, music, wants to be a worship leader, right? Like, that's your heart. So can we just talk a little bit first about, like, how do you kind of connect with God whenever you're worshiping? Like, how did that change from you from just, like, singing to sing and, like, singing to actually, like, connect with God?
So I always grew up at church, like, whatever. I was kind of just dragged there. Like, I love Jesus, but I was at, like, a church that was, like, I didn't really understand things, you know. And then I moved schools in 7th grade, went to a Christian school, and that kind of, like, transformed, like, the way that I look at things. And then I started having my own personal relationship with Jesus. And it kind of wasn't going through the motions anymore. It was like actually a thing. And then after my freshman year is whenever I joined the worship team, and that was just kind of a fun thing because I've always liked music and whatever. And then I was at church camp that summer, and that's a whole other story for a different day. We could do our testimonies, maybe. I don't know, because that's a big, huge part of my testimony.
Yeah.
But I just had a moment during one of those worship services that I could like feel the presence of God, and I allowed it to happen because I feel like I kind of was like closed off, like I wasn't as vulnerable. But now, whenever I'm worshiping, like I will unapologetically have my hands like raised, like fully let him in, and like it's really just like such an intimate moment, I feel like, and that's just kind of the way that I connect to Jesus the most is through worship music. So I just feel called to share that to other people and do that with my future. So
yeah, I think that's really good. I liked how you said like you felt like you were kind of blocking God out a little bit, and then you just kind of
it wasn't even like an on purpose thing. It was just kind of a subconscious like, okay, people are gonna judge me if I like do this or like whatever. And then at church camp I was just like,
you let down all of those boundaries that typically are there, and you're just like, okay, God, like I want you to do whatever you have to do with me, and here you are.
Yeah,
I think that's so good. And I think that, so what we're talking about today, comparison, I feel like that kind of flows into it, because I think sometimes our comparison keeps us from doing things.
Yeah.
And it can keep us from having like our own walk with Christ. And I think that that's something the enemy really uses to attack us. But I think it would be fun if we just started out with like a little silly like thing about comparison, like the silly things that we've compared ourselves to people. Because I think sometimes whenever it's in our head, it's so serious, but then whenever we say it out loud, it's like, that was the dumbest thing.
No, literally.
Like, why did I compare it? Okay, so I guess I'll go first. I remember, and this wasn't even, I'm trying to think, I feel like in middle school, I really compared like myself to everyone, like literally everyone. But I remember, so this one I guess isn't as funny, but it's a little bit serious, and now I'm like, that's so stupid. But I remember my sophomore year, like everyone's like getting a car, right? And everyone's like, oh my goodness. And the town I lived in, it was pretty preppy, and everybody like got their car, and they was like brand new. And I remember specifically this one story. I didn't have a car yet, and I was comparing myself to everyone. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm never gonna get a car. I'm never gonna be that person. Like, oh, like, and I was just like distraught because I'm like, everybody's getting a car. I'm not. They're doing all these fun things. And I remember I go in to, I think, whatever class I was in, and this girl was talking, and she was like, oh my goodness, like, I just got my Ford Bronco 2022 Sport because, like, the 2021, like, oh my goodness, that was so last year. And I was like, did you actually say that? I just was like, my mind was completely blown. But I think that I thought going in, especially getting a car, and now I have a car, but I thought going into getting a car, I was like, everyone's gonna care about what car I have. Nobody cares about, like, if you, and I think if you have a car, a lot of people are like, oh, and if they care, then, like, that was literally on them. And you can just tell that they're, like, you don't want them anyway if they're gonna care about what like, car you have.
Comparison is something that I'm, like, it's a struggle. I went to a private Christian school for 7th and 8th grade. And a lot of the people there, let's just say, have a lot more money than my family does. And I still, like, am very blessed with a bunch of things from my family and stuff. So, like, there's nothing wrong there. But I would just look at all these, like, outfits and shoes that they have and, like, their houses compared to my small house. And I was almost embarrassed. And I'm like, okay, do I really want them to come to my house? Because after seeing their houses, I'm like, mine is tiny. But then every time someone new comes to my house, they're like, oh my gosh, I love your house. Like, let's go to your house. It's so homey. And then I'm like, oh, no one's thinking of it in that way. Like, no one cares as long as, like, they like me for me. It doesn't, materialistic things don't matter. And, like, they might have, like so much Lululemon, and I'm just having all this fake Lululemon.
But you know what? Fake Lululemon.
It still
honestly,
looks real.
But style is a big thing. That was another funny thing I compared myself to. My backpack. Oh my goodness, I compared my backpack to everyone else's like backpack because I got it in middle school and I loved it, and then I got into high school and I was like, oh, this looks like a little middle schooly, like everyone has like the plain black backpacks and I have all of this, and so I was just kind of like, I don't really like my backpack for the longest time, and like now I don't really care because I'm like, it's literally just a backpack, like you only wear it to school, like who cares?
No one's gonna remember that
backpack. That I remember, I compared myself so much, and I think so. Here's the thing, and it just kind of came to my mind. I think when we're talking about comparison, what happens sometimes is there are issues that happen with our lives, like whether we're not being accepted or whether we just feel like alone or whether we feel like these different things about people, right? And so then, especially if it's appearance related or materialistic related, we have a tendency to be like, oh, they're not liking me. That feeling is happening to me because of this that I don't have. So you look at, like, for instance, if I was getting left out of a friend group a ton, but Cassie wasn't, then what I would do is I would compare myself to her. Oh, well, I have a different backpack than her. Oh, I look different than her. Oh, I do this. And so we compare, and then we autofill in our mind, like, oh, then that's the reason why they don't like me.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's not always, like,
no.
I don't think that's always the case. I think there are some people who they just aren't going to like you no matter what you do or what you have.
And I was so scared for, like, some of my friends to come over to my house, and they, like, love it. And that was in 7th grade, and I'm a senior in high school. And my very best friend, she, like, we're still best friends, and, like, the materialistic things that she had versus what I had have nothing to do with our friendship and nothing to do with, she likes me for who I am, and, like, she likes my family for who they are, and it has nothing to do with what she might have over me. You know what I mean?
And I think, too, some of the times it's, like, you get to see someone's true character. Like, are they really someone who cares so much about what you have or what you don't have or what you look like or what you don't look like that they're going to care? Like, they're going to put that on you or not? Or are they someone who's going, like, because I think if there's somebody who meets you and say you have something, you don't have something, whatever it is, in the comparison of, like, the things you have, like the car or whatever it is that you have, and there's somebody who goes, like, oh, I just don't want to be your friend, or they're kind of like, you don't want to be friends with them anyway. Because you want someone who's going to speak life over you. You don't want somebody who's just going to tear you down. And out of material possessions, like, that's something that can change. Yeah. That's something, like, not about your character. You want someone who's going to look at your character and go, oh, like, that's their character and that's why I want to be friends with
like,
them.
if they're going to have a genuine friendship with you, they're going to look at you rather than what you have, you know?
Yes.
Like, and Adrienne is one of the most genuine people that I've ever met, and, like, it doesn't matter. She likes me for me. I didn't have to have all this stuff. And some of those kids at that school were like, oh, Cassie, like, you live out in the cornfields. You don't live in this nice where we live.
I feel like that's like some sort of like Pixar movie.
No, yeah, it was like
that storyline. Like, Cassie lives out in the cornfields.
It's literally like I am just a small town girl.
That. But honestly, again, it's just like it's like little stuff, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, does Cassie want to have a friend like her friend Adrienne, or does she want to have a friend like the friends who are gonna go? No, she wants to attract the friends who are going to accept her and love her. But the other thing I was going to talk to you about as well is let's talk about like appearance stuff, comparison and appearance. Because I think that is totally something everyone struggles with. I don't think I've met someone who doesn't struggle with that, and if they do, then like, man, you're just a different type of human.
Literally.
So do you have any tips that come to your mind that you can think of for comparison?
I literally, most of the times I compare my looks to people. Okay, so like if I like a guy and then I'm like, okay, they like me for a little bit and then they go find someone else, I immediately get an obsession over that new person or the person that they liked right before me. And I'm like, and even I'll sometimes look at like who they liked right before me and like look at them and really become obsessed with that and be like, okay, how can I change myself to be more like this person so he likes me more?
Oh, I have a story about that. That's
and something that helped me was I liked this guy, and it was kind of a long-term-ish thing, and then there was this other girl in the picture, and I constantly compared myself to her.
Can't help but compare.
Constantly. And one day I was like, okay, wait a minute. Here's me. I might be comparing myself to her looks. Maybe, oh, she has the blonde hair and the blue eyes. She has the nice body. She has the nice style. Like, whatever. But at the end of the day, if that girl is the type of girl that this guy wants to go after, then I have no business being with him because she might,
her character.
Based on her character, I'm like, character makes someone way less attractive, or character makes someone way more attractive.
Yep.
So like if this guy's going after these type of girls, I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and be like, if he wants to go after that type of girl, then I need to leave him behind.
Then the fact that you are different is actually a compliment to you.
Exactly.
It's not like it's not a diss on you. I think that's something that we struggle is we see ourselves being different and we automatically are just like, oh, I'm just different. And reality, a lot of times it's good. Like if you're different than somebody else, I believe that because God made us so specifically that like there is some of us who, I mean, it even talks about it in the Bible, like we're different parts of the church body, right? Like we're made to complement each other, but we're all different. And if we were all the same person, like could you just imagine, I think sometimes we'll compare our looks or something to another girl or whatever it is. And like, oh, well, I wish I could look exactly like her because then all the guys would want me or then all the girlfriends would want me. But in reality, if you looked like her and if everyone looked like her, then nobody would care how you looked because you would all look the same.
Exactly. Or like even if you like see a girl that you're like, oh, I wish I looked like her. If I looked like her, I would have no problems. Oh, you have no idea. You could, if you looked like her, you wouldn't want to look like her.
Nope.
It's always the girls with long hair always want short hair. If you have short hair, you want long hair. If you have blue eyes, you want brown eyes. If you have brown eyes, you want blue eyes. You're never gonna be satisfied with yourself unless you start being like, okay, this is how God made me. What's that verse?
I think you're talking about you're altogether beautiful.
You're altogether beautiful,
darling. There's no flaw in you.
Yes.
And it's like that. No, we were talking about this morning when we were getting ready. Is like for the longest time, whenever I had curly hair, like wavy hair, especially in middle school and high school, like that wasn't really like the cool thing to have. I guess like your hair would be frizzy or whatever, and all these girls would just like curl their hair like every single day. So I felt not as put together because my curls were like frizzy or whatever. And Cassie was like, man, I would have loved to have your curls. Like they're so pretty and stuff like that. And so I think that it's time that instead of looking at your differences and being like, oh my goodness, like I hate that so much about myself, you need to look at yourself and go, no, that difference about me is what has given me and equipped me to do what God's called me to do. Because for whatever reason, he's given you that difference. And whether it's like, oh, I have like huge earlobes or huge ears or whatever, okay. But maybe you're able to relate with somebody because of that. Maybe you're able, like, I remember this missionary and she wanted blue eyes so bad. And she had brown hair and brown eyes. And she would pray to God every single day and be like, God, will you just please give me that? And he never would. But what did she end up doing? She ended up being a missionary in India. And because of the coloring that she had, she was able to go and not get caught.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, her appearance was specifically tied to her purpose. And so instead of, like, just going and being like, oh, like, I'm awful, what if there's a guy out there who's like, oh, my goodness, I want a girl with big earlobes or whatever it is that you have. Literally. I want a girl with, like, with super curly hair. Or I want a girl with super fine, straight, like, straight hair. Like, you have no clue. Also, can I just say, and this is something, maybe this is just some big sis tips advice, you can probably agree with me. The things that you think guys are gonna hate about you, I guarantee you they don't even think about.
They don't even notice.
They don't even notice. I will promise you this. There was something, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, I remember there was something about myself that I was just like, oh my goodness, I just hate this about myself, or whatever it was. And there was some guy made some offhanded comment. He was like, you know what I really like about girls is like this or whatever. Yeah. I think it had something to do with like having like a stomach or something. Yeah. And some dude was like, oh my god, it's so attractive when a girl has like a little bit of a stomach. Yeah. And I was like, what?
Yeah,
because you only hear about like, oh, you have to be like super, like you have to have a six pack. You have to like, you know what I'm saying? Like it has to be, but every single guy has a different taste.
Exactly.
So like I just like think. There's like a guy out there who's like, oh my goodness, like my dream girl is like Cassie.
Exactly.
Like, oh my goodness, like I want somebody specifically like that, and they haven't even met you yet. Like
no, yeah, like I had a boyfriend my sophomore year, and I like vividly remember like one day I had my hair curled and like the front piece was like straight, like it was just straight. I'm like going to class with him
sophomore year type of complex.
And I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna see.
He's gonna hate it.
Like my one straight hair. And so the first thing I did was point it out because I'm like, okay, I don't want like whatever.
Yeah. No, we'd so.
And
do
he
that.
goes, he goes, I didn't even notice that till you said something. And I was like,
Because they wouldn't notice.
And then it kind of became like an ongoing joke. Like every time I curled my hair, he's like, "Did you bring a curling iron for that front piece?" And
oh my goodness.
It was a funny little thing, but like I was so worried about that, and he didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
Also, something that's helped me like come to terms with like what I look like and like not putting myself down is that God created me. Whenever I'm hating on myself and not liking what I'm looking at in the mirror, that's me hating on God's creation. That's insulting God's creation. And like that was just very eye-opening to me, because I'm like, oh, you're right. Like I look outside and I'm like, oh, it's like beautiful, the sky is beautiful, the flowers, and I'm like, the same God who created all of that also created me. And I'm like, oh, this is like a good like perspective to like look at it.
That is so good. Like really sit there and think about what she's saying, because like the same God who created all those things that you love, like you can look at you and can admire their beauty without feeling intimidated. Like, oh my goodness, like that tree's so pretty. Did you say it's prettier than me? Like whatever it is, like that is God's creation as well. Like whatever it is. And I think that so often, I think the reason why we get up in our heads about judging ourselves, like we literally self-judge ourselves. We look and we like talk down. Like sometimes we speak death to ourselves, like in our own heads. And that's not okay. I don't think God wants you to speak to yourself that way, just like he wouldn't want you to speak to somebody else that way. But like I think so often, I was talking to a different friend several months ago, this always stuck into my head, and she was just talking about how our culture is so obsessed with love that we're so like fixated on appearance. Because appearance is the portal to love, because like that's the only physical representation we see of, well, why would they like her, why would they like him? Oh, because of how he looks or something, or how they look. But in reality, it's more about the character. Like, it's more about the inside. And so I just want to remind you, like, too, whenever you look at yourself, you're not having a best hair day, best eyelash day, whatever it is. I want you to look in the mirror and remind yourself, yeah, but that's not what makes me lovable. Like, what makes me lovable is the inside. And the right people should love me for what's on the inside, not if I'm having a bad hair day.
Like, whenever someone asks me, like, what my favorite trait about myself is, I'll be like physically, I like my smile, but like usually like the first thing that comes to my mind is my heart, and I'm like,
heart, yeah,
duh, because why? Like I feel like character just totally makes someone more attractive, and you just need to like, you think about those girls who you are constantly comparing yourself to, they're probably a lot less happy than you. You know what I mean? Like I would rather not be living for the male gaze, but being happy and like whatever and confident in my own self without getting attention from guys, rather than trying to get all this attention from guys and just like damaging myself and like letting guys use me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is really good. And I think too that sometimes it can be easy whenever we're comparing ourselves to people to just compare our like faults to their best things. Like, oh my goodness, here's my worst hair day, but she's having her best hair day, so I'm just gonna look at you and be like, oh, like you look so much prettier than me, whatever. But like I think it's the same thing when you go to personality. Like we look at the pretty girl and we go, she has no issue. Well, but what if she's starving herself at home and she has a terrible home life and you have no clue what she's going to, and you're saying, well, she just has the perfect life. And even if it's just like the popular girl who you think has it all, but like in reality, she's sobbing every night alone, and you have no clue what they're going through. But it's so easy to just immediately judge and go, well, they just have a better life than me. Well, maybe you have a better life than them. Like, you really don't know. And so take the good in your life and enjoy that. But don't let their good in their life, like, rain on your parade.
Yeah. Another thing you have to think about is you have, like, your tight group of friends. Would you ever look at them and be like, look at them how you look? Like, you have to look at yourself how you look at your friends. You look at your friends and you think they're the most beautiful people because you know them, and knowing them makes them beautiful because they have a beautiful heart. And obviously, if you're like, your friends are going to look at you the same way, your friends are going to love on you, accept you, whatever. You can't bring yourself down while bringing the people you love up, because you just need to talk to yourself the way that you would talk to other people. Because like, I have a friend that, like, me and her, people say, I have a friend, and people say me and her look similar, and, like, they call us twins, and they're like, oh, you guys look the same, we have the same smile, Obviously you're older than her, but that's literally the only difference. And I look at her and I'm like, I want to be her, and I just want to be her. And I'm like, okay, Cassie, all these people are saying that you guys look the same. Like, you look at yourself like in a way that you're almost looking for things to not like. I feel like whenever I look at myself, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I like my smile, but like my nose is really big. Like, that's kind of, I feel like everything.
You're
like,
always pointing out the bad thing, but you would never do that with
to your friends. Exactly.
Like, oh yeah, but I hate this about them. And you did two things there that I really liked. The first one was, I want you to like just thought exercise. Think about your friend. If they were having a bad hair day, would you be like, you deserve to have an awful day? And would you all day be like, oh yeah, but look at that hair. Yeah, but you look bad. Or would you just like not talk to them for the day because they're having a bad hair day? No. If your friend gained 5 pounds, would you like treat them like they're terrible and be like, well, you deserve to starve? No. If they lost 5 pounds, would you, like, the same thing? Like, if your friend did the things that you're punishing yourself for, would you punish them for it? No, because they're your friend. They have that heart. And like, I've had friends before, and it's like their heart that makes me just love them, because that's what attracts you to somebody, is their heart, is their demeanor, is all of that stuff. And like, I think that sometimes we just look at ourselves and we judge ourselves so much because we're like, oh my goodness, like, I just look awful or whatever. But then the second thing you said that I really liked was, sometimes we want to be the other person. It's not that we're even comparing ourselves. We want to be the other person. And that's really not okay. As a son or daughter of the King, especially, like, if you are saved, God made you to be you. And if you're trying to wish out a way to be someone else, and like, that's just not okay. God wants you to learn to use your gifts and to learn to use your life in a way that you love it. He doesn't want you to wish it away being someone else. Because I've tried. There have been people I've compared myself before, even to the guy thing. Like, a guy that I like, they were with somebody, or the guy I was with, like, broke up, whatever. And I compared myself, and I was just like, oh yeah, but she's like tall, and she's this, or she's whatever it is. And I've tried to be that person. But whenever you try to fit yourself in a box that's only built for somebody else, you're never going to fit into it. And it's always going to be really uncomfortable, and you're going to not feel like yourself. So, like, be yourself and attract the right people that come into your life because of that.
Yeah, because if you're, like, not being yourself and you're trying to be someone else, that's going to be exhausting. Like, just super, super exhausting. Like, if you just stay true to yourself. Like, I've always been, like, more of an outgoing type girl, and, like, it's caused me to, like, kind of... Like, I have great friends, like, but it's kind of always caused me to, like, I don't really have a set friend group, I'd say. I have multiple friend groups. Yeah. But so sometimes it kind of bites me in the butt that I'm like, for example, one of my friend groups, they're all in high school. They're in high school? They're all out of high school now. Right. So I'm like, oh, I should have just, like, never been friends with them, and, like, I wouldn't have to be dealing with this wrath. And I'm like, oh. If I was never friends with them, I would have never made some of the best theater memories ever. I would have never, like, had the opportunity to, like, do so many things. And they've all shown me, like, what a true friendship is. And, like, I don't know. I just think that you have to accept who you are in a way that, like, I don't know. I feel like with them, I can be fully myself. And there's some people that I'm just like, oh, I can't fully be myself. I can't fully open up because, which there's nothing wrong with, like, more reserved people, but, like, I'm very, like, big, and I am annoying. Like, I am so self-aware that I'm annoying. And, like, it's not even like, oh, she's so annoying. It's like, I just talk all the time. And it's honestly something that I'm like, I need to work on, because sometimes I'll, like, interrupt people and I'm like, dang it, I did it again. Or, like, I don't know, I'm always, like, singing a song or something, and some people can't stand that, and I'm like, you know what, whatever.
It's okay, because they don't understand you. But, like, again, I'm the same way. I love talking, like, I just love it, and I've been burned from it, because people will make comments and be rude to me because I talk loud or whatever it is. But now who's on this podcast, right? Is the two people who talk like crazy. Yeah. Because God said, you know what, that's something that other people are going to look at you and go, well, you're stupid about that, and I'm going to use for your good. So even whenever it comes to, like, personality stuff, right? Whenever you look at someone else, you're like, oh, but they're, like, the quiet, mysterious girl. Like, yeah, but they're so... And I had one of my guy friends recently, I was like, you know, I think that I'm intimidating to some people because I'm, like, this over-the-top, like, crazy, whatever. And he reminded me, he was just like, Claudia... you realize that, like, because you're like that, a lot of times people will expect you to, like, voice your opinion, like, voice what you want. So when you don't, they don't really, like, okay, so, and the reason why this is it, because it kind of seems like a rabbit trail, but I promise it's not, is, like, sometimes whenever you compare yourself to somebody else, you compare the results they're getting from other people. So, like, whenever I look at this shy, mysterious, quiet girl, and I'm like, oh my goodness, but she's getting people who are going out of their way to be like, oh, well, how are you doing? Like, you're doing good. And I'm like, but nobody ever, like, there are a few people, obviously, who are thoughtful and stuff. But it's like, but I feel like people don't come to me, and they're always like, oh, are you okay? Right. Because I'm always like, oh, I'm not okay. Yeah. The worst day, or this is the best day of my life. Like,
that's literally me.
And my guy friend was just like, okay, Claudia, you have to realize there are a few things. He's like, first of all, he actually gave me some love advice, too, so... If you guys are also a very, like, loud, obnoxious, super social, like, extroverted girl like me, this might help you. But he was like, first of all, you have to realize that, like, people are going to expect you to tell them things. So, like, they're probably, yes, some people are going to be thoughtful. Yeah. Some people are going to make sure, like, oh, are you okay? But because they expect you to be like, I'm not okay right now, then they're probably not as often going to be like, oh. But guess who's going to go to you and tell you about their wins or tell you about, because you're the person who will celebrate and who will have a good time, like stuff like that. And he was like, in the same way, like a guy might be more apt to like make a move on the mysterious girl. Yeah. Because she's not one, she keeps her cards like close to her vest. He was like, but people like you like tell everybody everything, so they're going to expect you to tell a guy like, oh my goodness, I have feelings for you or whatever it is.
And like with my school friend group, like my senior school friend group, we're all like at a football game once, and I'm like definitely the loud one, like for sure, and it's definitely a lot sometimes. But like one time we were at a football game and there was this sports guy there, and we really wanted him to come to our soccer game, and because we were like undefeated this season, and we were all like trying to get his attention, and they all were like, but I don't want to say anything. And then one of them was like, Cassie. Duh, Cassie will. Yeah. So then they came and like asked me to get his attention, and I obviously did because I just don't care.
Because that's your personality, and the same thing that people are gonna be like, oh, like we don't like her for, is the same thing they're gonna come to you. Exactly. And it's the same thing for you, and maybe you're the shy and quiet girl, and if that's the case, okay, because there are gonna be people who trust you more than they're gonna trust somebody who talks a lot, or they're gonna be people who come to you for certain things that they maybe wouldn't come to me for because I'm not the shy and mysterious person.
Yeah, and I think it's a good like. Within different friend groups, like especially the one at school, it's a good balance between like, oh, these girls don't talk as much, and then there's like me, obviously like the loud, obnoxious one. But like sometimes it's a good balance, and you need that because you don't want to be awkwardly like sitting in silence forever, but you also don't want to have people like talking over each other at all times, and it's just like whatever. And like I feel like at my school, everyone kind of knows like I'm outgoing, like I'll be friends with anyone, and it's just like. If anyone needs me to go tell a teacher something or go ask someone something, they're like, oh, Cassie will do it. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And that's what, I don't need to compare myself and be like, oh, like, I'm annoying and, like, she's more popular than me, she's cooler than me, she's prettier than me, she's more normal than me. Normal? Like no?
What? Yeah, no. Everyone's wacky and crazy in their own way. Yeah. But, like, I think, too, sometimes, and I think it would be good, too, to pivot about how does the enemy try to use comparison? Because we talk about unity. Like, as a body of Christ, God wants us to be unified, and he wants us to work together. And I think it's so easy for jealousy, because I think jealousy is kind of the force behind all of this. I agree. It's like, oh, and I mean, you've seen that jealous girl who, like, wants to be you. Oh, yeah. And, like, oh, my goodness, you guys, I have too. And it's awful because it's like you can tell when they want to be you instead of, oh, I want to be, like, friends with you, or, like, oh, I kind of wish I had that, but, like, the jealousy turns into them wanting to be you, and what does that cause? It causes divisiveness, and I think that the enemy wants that, because if he can convince you, and, like, oh, yeah, but she has something I don't have, and I want to have it, but if I take it away from her, then maybe she'll be like me, or if I get the thing, then maybe I'll be like her, then what we do is we start throwing darts, and we're on the same side of the fence, like, we're both Christians, we're both working for Christ in our own different ways. Cassie is going to impact different people than I'm going to impact, right? Because God made us as two different people. But if we decide to look at each other and go, yeah, but I just don't really like her because of this reason or this reason, then what we start to do is we start to, like, fight each other. And we're, like, the team that's working together. Yeah. Like, we're fighting our own team. We should be focused on the enemy schemes. We should focus on attacking the jealousy before we attack the other person.
Right.
because that is what we're truly fighting.
I agree. And like along with that, whenever you're constantly comparing yourself, you're just letting Satan win. And that's kind of something that I've had to be it's like a flipped mindset. Right?
Flip switch.
Is mindset the right word?
I think so.
Yeah, it's like a switch in my mindset is like, okay, I instead of looking at this in a worldly perspective, I need to look at it in a worldly perspective.
Ooh, okay.
Bars!
Alliteration, I love it.
And it's like, okay, I need to look at myself. God created me. I'm beautiful and this and that, blah, blah, blah. That's what the word says. But the world's gonna say, you're never good enough. Like Olivia Rodrigo's song, Pretty Isn't Pretty. When pretty isn't pretty enough, what do you do? Because anything you do is never gonna be enough.
Yeah,
like
a subtle plug for Olivia.
Oh yeah. I feel like especially as a girl, like it's hard. There's so many beauty standards and like it's constantly changing. Like one minute everyone's supposed to be this like stick skinny girl, and then the next minute everyone's supposed to have curves,
and then it goes right back. And like people are removing their BBLs, and people are getting them, and like it's like, oh my goodness, like what are we supposed to do? And it's like, no, you're supposed to be yourself.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be yourself. You're not supposed to exalt one person or another person. And beauty fades. Like, beauty is going to fade. And whether it's the beauty, whether it's something else, at some point in time, like, I think especially beauty, but, like, at some point in time, that's going to fade. And you're not going to look the same that you did here and now. And at some point in time, they're not going to have that 2022 Ford Bronco Sport. They're going to have a different car. And maybe it's still a better car. But I also want to just remind you guys, like, at some point in time, it may not be your moment right now, but in some point in time, it will be your moment. It may not be your moment for the boy because, oh my goodness, the relationship, like comparing yourself with other people's relationships, other people's friendships, other people's, and I will tell you guys right now from someone who has a little bit of perspective on this, I'm not saying I have a ton, but there are people who I know, who I follow on social media, and if I didn't know what was going on behind those closed doors, I would think they would have the perfect, and there were people who I genuinely did, I was like, oh, like, wanted to cry over, right? And I was like, oh my goodness, like, these people are just, like, perfect people, and they have the perfect relationship, and then you start to learn more about them, and you're like, but they don't, and they have, like, major problems, and they're actually so toxic to each other, but, like, if you didn't know that, then you would just think, oh, like, they have but they're posting that because, in a way, they want to convince themselves that they have a good relationship.
Exactly.
Too.
No, I used to, like, obsess. Me and one of my friends used to obsess over this one couple and be like, oh, I want what they have. Like, oh my gosh, they're perfect. Like, look at all this stuff that they're posting, blah, blah, blah. And they broke up. Come to find out, he's, like, always cheating on her. And, like, she's just actually, like, heartbroken through the whole relationship. And I'm like, what? Like
that's not what you want. You wanted the image of what they portrayed. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that there's so many things in life that are like that too. Even the social media stuff, whether it's social media, whether it's the relationship, whether it's a friendship people have, whatever it is, people can portray a part of them, but like you don't know the monsters in their closet. So I feel like that's honestly like basically what we've been saying this whole podcast is like it's so easy to compare yourself to somebody without knowing what they're going to.
Yeah.
And so also be nice and gracious to them because it can be easy to turn the cold shoulder and be like, oh, well, they just have it all figured out. I don't want to be their friend. But maybe they don't, and maybe they need you to be their friend, or maybe they just need somebody to hear them out and give them a chance. Like, before you make up your mind about somebody, realize that they're coming into life and they have their own life experience, and maybe they don't struggle with the same insecurities that you struggle with. Maybe they have different ones, but they also have ugly parts of their life, and nobody has just a perfect life whatsoever.
No, and every single person that you're comparing yourself to is also comparing themselves to someone else.
To somebody else.
Maybe they're even comparing themselves to you. Like really, like I'm sure like there's some people that I've compared myself to that also compare themselves to me.
Like whenever we met at the concert, I literally remember I saw Cassie and I was like, oh, she's like the most beautiful person I've ever met in the world. And I was like, she would never want to be my friend. And so I remember like I was intimidated by her, right? But now we're friends and she's like super sweet. But if I had let that comparison just get a hold of me and be like, or if I had looked at her with jealousy and been like, oh, she's like
probably
so
mean,
pretty,
like,
and like all this stuff, then we would have never been friends. So like also like jealousy will kill and it'll steal and it'll destroy and it'll do everything that the devil wants you to do. So really continually remind yourself this is who God made me to be, and he made me to be this, and it was beautiful and it was good, and he does not look at you with the same filter that you look at yourself.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that was an amazing podcast episode, Cassie. You guys go ahead and leave a comment leave a review, I think, actually. I'm going to try to get this podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
So leave a review on Spotify, a comment on YouTube if you're watching, and follow us on all of our socials linked down below in the description. I will see you guys next week, and I cannot wait. Love you guys.
Peace out.
So catch me if